Have you ever heard of phantom phone calls? These are the most interesting ghost stories to me. They're right up there with like near death experiences. I absolutely love them, and I found a treasure trove of them, and I'm so excited about it, even though it's pretty freaking creepy. However, I would like to start off with one that is more well known, I reckon. Anyways, this is about Charles Peck, and if you've never heard the story, it is freaking wild. So on September 12th, 2008, in the San Fernando, California area, there was a passenger train that collided with a freight train, and this was a bad thing. But it gets really weird whenever you start talking about Charles Peck. So basically, what happened? Charles's fiance was sitting there watching the news whenever she seen on the news that there was this major crash. Well, she knew Charles was on that train car, so she was freaking out. She's trying to get a hold of him. She's calling the police. She's calling the hospitals. She's calling everybody she can't get a hold of him. She's like, oh shit. She calls his parents, calls his kids. Like, nobody has heard from him. She's freaking out. She's like, I don't know what to do about this situation. So she's just sitting there waiting whenever she gets a phone call from Charles. And she's like, thank God. However, there was something weird with the phone call. It was just staticky. So like he calls, it's staticky. So he hangs up. She calls him right back and it goes straight to voicemail, which is really weird unless you're just on the line or he's calling you back and forth, whatever. It's just weird. Anyways, she calls everybody. She's like, oh my God, this is so crazy. Charles is alive. I got a phone call from him, and so like he's out there. Something's happening. Well, this is whenever the family's like, yeah, we got a phone call from him too, but it was just static. We tried hollering for him, we couldn't get a hold of him, but he's been calling us. So everybody's good. Everybody's like, okay, we're just gonna wait this out, whatever. So she calls the police to let him know, hey, my fiance has been calling me, and like he's on the train. However, he's not answering, and she tells him who it is. Well, they find out that he was sitting near the front of the train. Now, whenever the rescue operation started, they counted that as like, these people are gone. Let's start, a little bit more towards the rear so we can get people that maybe might be alive out of here. So the police were a little bit suspicious because like he shouldn't have been calling. However, like he started calling while she's in front of the police, and they're like, oh shit, let's move this operation, because they knew that he was, alive and calling. So they moved the operation to get him out of there. You can't just leave somebody stranded. Like, you got to get to them if you know that they're alive. So the firefighters start digging in. Well, he calls so much, like, I don't know, 35 times, that the police were able to ping his location. So they were able to dial it in, like exactly where he was sitting. They was like, this is great. We're going to find him. Everybody's pumped about this because like he's calling everybody. Anyways, about 12 hours in, or I guess maybe an hour before they actually found him, the phone call stopped, but they had enough location data that they knew exactly where he was sitting. However, whenever they got down to him, there was a problem. They could tell immediately that Charles was dead. And they're like, okay, this is crazy. Maybe he just passed away. Anyways, they got Charles out of there. They sent him off to the coroner or whoever like looks at a body and determines how long it's been dead, or a bunch of them. And they were like, no, he's been dead for, 13 hours. There's no way his body could sustain this injury. No amount of adrenaline is going to keep you alive from this injury. Like, it's just not possible. So we're like, oh, okay, well, let's get his phone or whatever. They couldn't find his phone on him. Well, maybe it was in the wreckage. They searched the wreckage. They could not find his phone. Now, remember, they were pinging this location, which means they only had just a little area where they had to search, and they could not find they never did find his phone, and he had been dead the entire time. So how was he making all these phone calls? Now, is there another reason for this? Well, there absolutely could be, but this is where we're going to move into a few other interesting stories that make me be like, yeah, no, they were calling it. They were calling. So anyways, let's move on to the next one. So this story is from a Mary B. This is really interesting. However, I want to just read it to you because I memorized the last one. So this goes, I have never been a believer in ghosts, but after what happened to me, I can't help but reconsider my position on this. I am a telephone sales representative. One of those people that constantly, I'm just kidding. And at the time of this occurrence, I was marketing a phone service. Here is what happened to me at work. On Thursday, April 26th, I made a sales call to Pennsylvania. It started just like any other call. Yes, I need to speak to Mr. or Mrs. B. The woman identified herself as Mrs. B. So I continued on with the normal sales call. She seemed very interested and asked a lot of questions, but when I came to the decision-making part, she quickly stopped me, insisting that I had to talk to her husband. Her objections were the same every time I attempted to close. She explained that she had tried to get him to change, phone carriers before, but in her words, he was married to eight and refused to make any changes. She also quickly pointed out that since his retirement, he spent a great deal of time fishing and was not easy to get in touch with, and it would be best to try early in the morning before he left for his favorite hobby. She also indicated that their long distance bills were getting out of hand because he made lengthy calls to North Carolina and felt that the plan would be beneficial to them. On that note, I decided that perhaps this was worth a callback and told her that I would call her husband the next day. The next day, I made a call that I will probably never forget. On the callback, the husband did answer the phone. I introduced myself in the normal fashion and explained that I had been talking to his wife the previous day and she had suggested that I speak to him. You can imagine the shock and horror when he distraughtly stated to me, "Lady, I don't know who you were talking to, but my wife died and I am not in the mood to speak to anyone." With that, he quickly hung up the phone. So freaking weird. I love it. Hang on. We'll do one more because this one gave me a little. I don't know why, but it did. So this one starts off. One of my clients related this story to me a few years ago. At the time, she worked for the Department of Social Services, and one of those services she offered was checks for emergency expenses. This is whenever you're low income. Some programs will send you a check for a certain amount to help you out with these programs. Anyways, she had issued a check for $100 to one of her clients for utilities and was about to close the file when her phone rang. On the line was the woman to whom the check was issued. The woman sounded vague and distracted, but clearly said, "I won't be needing that $100 after all." My client made a note of it and went on with her other work. That evening at home, she was reading the newspaper when she saw the obituary of the woman she had talked to with on the phone. She had died the previous day. Okay, I know I said that was going to be the last one, but I love these, so I'm just going to read one more to you, and then you'll probably already clicked off. Anyways, so this one starts off. This happened to my older brother, Matt. About a year ago, just a few weeks after my oldest brother Jeremy's best friend Joe died of heart trouble. Anyways, Matt, the one that it happened to, received a telephone call from a person that sounded exactly like Joe. Like Joe died, that's the eldest brother's best friend. Anyways, he said something like, "Hey Matt, it's Joe. Is Jeremy home? Something really strange is going on." Well, Matt freaked out and could hardly answer. He was like, "No, he's not. Sorry." And then the phone hung up and Matt looked at the caller ID. It read out of area. So Matt tried star 69. If you're younger, that's what you used to do to get the phone number. Anyways, but they were unable to trace the call. We never got another telephone call from Joe, and it still scares Matt to think about it. So just think about this. Your older brother's best friend died a few weeks ago, and you're sitting there and the phone rings and it's like, "Hey, so this is Joe, your older brother's best friend. Is Jeremy there?" And you're like, no, I'm sorry, he's not. And then they just hang up. How freaky would that be? Oh my God, it'd be so freaky. Anyways, I thought these were really cool and I love these stories, so I figured you all would enjoy a few of them. So I just want to share it with you all. So if you enjoyed that, be sure you can follow if you'd like. I'll find some more. I don't know. I just like them. I figured you all would enjoy them too. So I figured I'd read them to you. With that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day and I hope, yes. Okay, bye.